So we've got our SMART goals in our mind, and you know what? It's probably time for me to unleash an embarrassing story. An embarrassing story about the number one mistake of goal setting. Because yes, I've given you 3 mistakes, but I haven't given you the number one mistake. The number one mistake. Oh my goodness. This is what happened to me when I was a young man. I was 30 years old. It's 2006 going on to 2007. And I remember this. I remember I'd set goals the years before that, but I remember I had a big New Year's Eve party coming up in my town of Stratford, Ontario. I was going to meet all my friends around 7 o'clock at night. But for a couple hours in the afternoon, I was sitting at home on the farm visiting my parents, and it was a snowstorm outside, and I was just sitting at the kitchen table. And I was sitting there and I was making my goals and plans for the year ahead. And I was typing them up on my computer. And, one goal turned into 10, and 10 goals turned into 20. And the next thing you know, I literally had 3 pages of goals, I think in about 10-point font. It was about all the places I wanted to go to. It was about all the articles I wanted to write, all the programs I wanted to write, all this, so many things. And you know what it was? It was what I call a shotgun scattered approach to setting goals. So we all know what the bullseye looks like, right? Bullseye in the middle, rings around it. What I had was a shotgun approach to setting goals. I was here, there, I was everywhere. And I wondered year after year, even before this one specific memory, I always wondered, man, I set all these goals, I'm not as successful as I want to be, and I'm really frustrated because look at my failure rate. It's like a player in the major leagues for baseball. Imagine they had a .100 batting average. They'd be down, they'd be the worst player in the league. And that's what I had for my goals. I was setting 100 goals, and I was only hitting 10 of them by the end of the year. And all those pages of goals, too many goals. That is the number one mistake that most people make. Well, I should back up. The number one mistake that most people make is they don't set any goals at all. But the number one mistake that high achievers like you and I make is that we probably are setting too many goals. Too many goals. And when we set too many goals, we end up with that frustration. Oh, why didn't I achieve this? Why didn't I achieve that? And we overlook the fact that we still achieved 10 of our goals. But here's the other thing. When you set goals, the bullseye should represent your absolute most important goals. And then there might be some around on the outside. But if you set too many goals, you start going for the outside first because it's easier. And yeah, you might even achieve 20 of your goals over the course of the year. But you know what? None of them had a big impact, and you didn't hit the bullseye in your major goals. So that's why I was frustrated. I remember coming home the next day, New Year's Day, and looking at those goals I set and thinking, there's got to be a better way. And who better to ask for a better way of setting goals than to go to my mentor, Mark Ford. Mark Ford is the man that started Early to Rise. Started Early to Rise in the year 2000. So by the time I bought it in 2011, he had already written thousands of essays for Early to Rise, and he had written many on goal setting. He's written books on goal setting. He is the master of goal setting. He's accomplished so much in his life. He's a multi-millionaire. He owns so much property. He's written so many books. And it's because he's dialed in with a focus on his major goals. And of course, he's also raised a great family, and he's built a great business. He has great relationships, so many friends, and has lived a great life. So how does he do it? Well, that's what I went to find out. I emailed him after that frustrating day back in 2007. I said, Mark, what am I doing wrong? And he said, Craig, he was in his cigar bar, and he was smoking a cigar, and he's talking to me on the phone. He said, Craig, this is what you're doing wrong. You're setting too many goals. And so he confirmed what I was thinking. And then he said, you don't need to set 20, 10. No, not that many goals. You don't even have to set 5 goals. It's just 4. 4 major goals for your life is all that you need. And so let me walk you through those 4 areas. And when you have these 4 areas for your goal setting, you're going to have a lot less stress because you're going to be thinking, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to worry about 3 pages of goals. I don't have to be, taking 30 minutes a day just to review my goals. No, you can do it a lot quicker. And the planning becomes more focused. And you hit the big goals and you move yourself so much further ahead. Because if you hit the bullseye, everything else around it's going to benefit. But if you just hit those outer rings, it will never penetrate the success area of the bullseye. So here are the 4 major areas. There's going to be your wealth. That is goal number 1. Mark says we need a major goal for our wealth. Second is our health. You cannot neglect your health, of course. And so that is the second area of life. Then it's your social self. This is about your relationships with your family, with your spouse. And then it's personal enrichment or personal development. So this could be writing a book. It could be taking up meditation. It could be spending more time in spiritual work. It could be going on a mission. It could be taking up art. It could be whatever it is that will give you greater personal development and fulfillment. So isn't this a nice life well lived? In fact, if you've ever heard me talk about the seasons of life, then you'll see such a great overlap. My friend Luciano Del Monte, he's a pastor. He said, Craig, there are 4 seasons in life. Season of health, season of wealth, season of social self, and a season of personal enrichment. It's exactly the same as what Mark recommends for setting goals. And I teach this. I've made YouTube videos on this. I write about it at Early to Rise because it's so simple. It just breaks us down for us so it's nice and easy for us to stay focused. So these belong in your bullseye. These belong in your bullseye. Now the wealth, you're going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted to think, oh, I want to get a raise this year. I want to invest in a rental property. I want to save $10,000. Maybe I want to buy some gold. No, it's too many goals. Too many goals. You got to focus. Because what if you just made getting a raise your number 1 priority in your wealth building? Now, if you set that as your bullseye, hopefully we can see that up here. We set getting a raise as your bullseye, and then investing in a rental property was the one outside, and buying some gold was the one out here, and saving 10K was out here. If you hit this bullseye, you have a better chance of getting them all. But if you only get that save 10K on the outside, you neglect trying to get a raise. You neglect buying that rental property. So focus on the main, biggest goal that is going to move you ahead in life. That's what it's all about. Picking that priority. So it does take a little bit of introspection and self-reflection to figure out what matters most to me. What is specific? What wealth building goal can be specific? I want to get rich is not specific. I want to save $10,000. I want to get a raise and make an extra $15,000 this year. That's specific. That is specific. Is it measurable? Yeah. You can measure your progress towards getting a raise, doing all the things that you need to do. Is it attainable? Well, you'll have to go and figure out if it's attainable based on your past work history. Is it realistic? Yeah. People get raises at your job. And is there a time deadline? Yes, you know when you can get that raise. And you know how much time you have left in this year. So yes, you put the SMART goals towards your big wealth goal. Of course, your health. Health can be anything from weight loss to muscle building to improving your blood measurements. All of those things can be specific because they can also be measured. You can measure those. You can track those over time. Now, earlier this year, I actually did one of these executive physicals. I went in, I spent 4 hours going through all these tests, and now I have a baseline. Here's the baseline of my cholesterol levels. Here's the baseline of my resting heart rate. Here's the baseline of my fitness test. And I can go back every year and see how I compare because I have specific measurements. And that's really powerful when you're doing your goal setting. Make sure that you are able to track your improvement. All right? Very important, because then you know whether or not you need to pick up the pace, whether you need to go outside and get a mentor, whatever you need in order to be successful. All right? So, what about social self? Well, social self, how the heck do we measure and track that? Well, let's say you've moved to a new city. Moved to a new city, you're kind of on your own here, and you want to make 10 new friends. 10 new friends in the next 90 days. Can you do that? Well, of course you can. How would you need to do that? Well, you're going to have to go and maybe join some sports leagues. You're going to have to get involved with people at work. You're going to have to ask for introductions. There's a process plan in place for all of that. So don't worry, we'll get there. Personal development. Well, what if you want to write that book? What if you want to write that book because there's a book inside all of us? And I highly recommend that you do create a book. And I've even made a video on how to write a book fast. And I believe that you can write a book every year. That's my goal. Write a book every year. And I know that if I need to write a book every year, then I need to have that book done by probably about Labor Day. So it can be edited and then in our gift bags at our annual Toys for Tots event here in Denver that we have every year. So each January I start working on my goal. That's always my personal development goal. Start working on the outline. Then I start writing. I devote that 1,000 words every day, first thing in the morning, to writing my book. I go through a couple of edits, hand it off on Labor Day weekend, or sometimes even in the summertime. And that allows me to hit my big goals of writing books that leave a legacy and impact other people and allow me to come up with things like the perfect kit. And then these goal-setting training sessions, they all come out of the book. The book is the bullseye, and all the things around it are those outside rings and all benefits. So these are the 4 major areas. This is the 4 in our 4x3 system. So powerful. Because here, this is part A of the new rules of goal setting. And now we're going to get into the 3-part system of the new rules of goal setting.